Hello and welcome to Happy Vending. I'm Bill, and today we're going to be putting a new front, once again, on this Merlin IV stack machine. Stay tuned. Happy Vending. So as you can see, this is a custom front on my Merlin IV machine that I actually had a former student at this high school design by the name of Troy Bauer, and I put this on in 2018, not only the front but also custom side decals as well. But what has happened, and the reason I'm going to have to swap this out, is at one point I think the custodial crew hit this trim piece with a floor scrubber, and in doing so they cracked the front plexiglass here. And once they cracked that, once students see that this was cracked, they start trying to pick their way into the machine. Why? Because they think that if they get behind this plexiglass, they can get to the drinks. So they start pulling and picking. Now I've put tape over this to sort of stop it from happening, but the crack has already gone up to here. This piece is completely broken out here, and you can see there's another piece broken here. So it's sort of a cancer. Students just keep at it, keep at it. You see it's broken down here as well. I've since replaced this piece of trim, so they really can't get into any new areas, but the areas that were already broken, they keep going at. Another issue on the front is right here. At one point, somebody glued a sign onto the machine, and it was some type of glue that bonded to the actual plexiglass, and when I tried to get it off, it took some of the front with it, and I don't like the way that looks. And then there's also a scratch over here that you can see. So because of all those things, I decided to buy another plexiglass front, same design. I went right back to NBS, which is where I got the front from in the first place, and ordered another one. They already had all the art on hand, so I didn't have to repay for the art fee. I just had to pay for the front. I didn't get the side graphics, and it cost $145 to reorder the front. And this is the way it's shipped. They roll it up like this. It has a protective coating on the front of it. And I'm gonna get that out and take out the old one and reinstall it. The art fee, the setup fee, if I had to pay for that again, that was around $80, I think, for the setup fee. I had another machine that I put a custom front on as well, and there's a video on that. It's an 804. It's a little bigger machine, but the process is pretty much the same. The other thing I need is these little retaining clips, which are called Christmas trees. Some guy in my other video, argued with me. They're not called Christmas trees, but actually in the part manual for the machine, they call these Christmas trees. Why? They look like Christmas trees, kind of. They have a point on the top, and they have those little fins that stick out. When I had to order them originally, I ordered a whole bag of them, and that's a little tip to clip. Whenever you order parts, get a lot of extras because the shipping cost is so expensive, and it's always good to have parts on hand. The parts themselves, these were probably only 25 cents a piece, but the shipping is what'll kill you. So you can see I ordered 40 of them. The part number is, if you can see that, it's 916009 if you had to order these. And they work for the G3 machines and the Merlin IV, which this is. So it's just good to have extras. To get the old ones out, you either can put a blade behind there and hit down on it, and it will cut off the top and push it out. Or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drill it out right here, and the top will fall off and the back will fall out. And then after that, there's a whole bunch of bolts in the back of these trim pieces. I'm going to loosen them, not take these completely off. The only one I'm going to take completely off is the top one. You can see that doesn't line up perfectly. That never did on this machine when I got it. I don't know exactly why, but it's not that big of a deal. So I just let that go. I don't expect that to look any better with the new piece of plexiglass. I unplugged the machine because I'm going to be working around the lights and I don't want power in the machine. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this trim piece and this product bar here. Take out the coin hopper. I'm actually going to remove the entire frame for the coin hopper just to make it easier to get in there. It's only a couple Phillips screws on this. I'm going to leave the screws in the frame so I don't lose them. You see this? Somebody tried to sabotage my machine. They put a thumbtack in here so that when somebody reaches in to get a drink, they get pricked. You gotta watch out for things like this. To get out this metal bar, you have 4 bolts on the machine, 2 on each side. I'm using my 11mm ratchet to take these off. Keep all your nuts and bolts together so you don't lose anything. Once you have those removed, this will pull out straight, like so. There's 2 more bolts on the top of this. You can see the bolts there. That's one, and that's the other. And looking up, you can see the top of the bolt, but you don't have to remove these completely. You just have to loosen them because there's an opening in the trim and it just has to be pulled out forward. Once you have those nuts loose, this trim piece will just come right forward. And that's what I was telling you, how the tops have openings on them. They're just slots, so that's why those bolts don't have to come completely out. And then there's a piece behind that, and you can see that there, and that will just lay back there. That keeps the front piece from being pushed inward, so you have that little spacer. At this point, I'm going to drill out the 3 Christmas trees on the front trim pieces. Now you can just push that in. Just like that. Now is the tedious part. There's about 30 of these nuts that have to be loosened on these trim bolts all along the sides, top and bottom of the machine. Now I'm going to completely remove the trim on the top, but all the other ones I'm just going to loosen. And to do this, since these bolts are long, I have 9mm deep socket that's going to fit on those to remove them. For these nuts on the left-hand trim piece, they actually have put holes in the metal here of the machine for you to put your socket through there to get to them, which is convenient. You might need an extension depending on how deep your socket is to go all the way through. So I've completely loosened all the nuts on the 2 side trim pieces, and I've removed the nuts on the upper trim piece. Now, a little tip for you as you're doing work on your machine, if you have glass fluorescent bulbs in here, you probably want to remove those while working on the machine, because if you tap up against them with a ratchet, they could explode. And I've had a bulb explode on me in the past, and it's a pain to clean up. These are plastic LED replacement bulbs, so they're less likely to break, so I'm not bothering to remove them. So now that I have all these nuts loose, you can see that there's a lot of play in the trim. I've completely taken off the nuts off of this top piece so that when I push this plexiglass out, this piece will come with it. I actually didn't loosen the nuts on this bottom piece yet. I'm going to see if I can get the new one in without loosening those. I might have to, we'll see, but all the side ones are loose. And now all I have to do is push this out from the inside and this will pop out. There you go. This is so cracked up that I'm not going to even save this. This is going to have to go in the dumpster. This is the way the top trim piece looks. The bolts that are in here are actually in a channel and they slide around. So when you put this back in, you have to line these up with the holes, and you got to make sure that they don't fall out because you'll lose them. They go right in the channel like so. This is what you see in a machine when the front comes off. Notice you can't get to the control board, you can't get to the coin changer, you can't get to the money. That's all still locked up. So if you ever see a machine with broken plexiglass, don't think that you're going to be able to get into anything valuable. You can get to the bulbs, which if you're poking around in here, you might get shocked if there's any exposed wires. So I don't suggest trying to reach into a machine if it has a broken plexiglass front. There's nothing you can get in there. But while this is off, this is a good time to clean the machine because here's that little plastic back piece that I was telling you about. Because now you can get to areas that are harder to get to when the machine has its front. So I'm going to get a rag, a wet rag, and just wipe this down just to clean this out. Probably could really use a vacuum cleaner, but I don't feel like dragging one out right now. Found a dime. There's a lot of broken chunks of plexiglass in here. And there's some broken glass in here from when that bulb broke that I was telling you about. So let's pull out the new front and just hold it up to the other one and make sure it's a good match. They have these plastic straps on them. I'm gonna cut them with some wire cutters. When I cut this bottom one, it's gonna wanna whip apart. Like that. Yep, it's a perfect match. I'm gonna pull off the protective coating now because it is a little tricky to pull it off later when it's in the machine. But now I just gotta be extra careful around this that I don't scratch it. All right, I'm going to try to put this in the sides and then push it down on the bottom trim piece. I wish there was an easy way to do this, but there really isn't. It just takes a little finagling. Sometimes it's easier if you let this sit out for a while so it doesn't have this bend in it. I think that's what I did originally, but I didn't have time to come and do that earlier, so I'm just going with it the way it is. By having all these trim pieces loose does make it easier to get it in there. You don't want to completely take off these side trim pieces because it's very hard to get all the bolts lined up to go back in. Because remember, the bolts are in a channel and they slide up and down, and they'd be going all over the place. So it just is best to keep these trim pieces loose. That gives you the wiggle room that you need to move this thing around and get it in the channel. It's in the two sides. I'm just going to push it down onto the bottom, and it went. And I didn't have to loosen this bottom piece at all. It just went in there, and that's great. That saves a lot of time. This little trim piece here, the back spacer, has to stay there, like so. And now it's just going to be a matter of me putting the top trim piece down and getting it lined up, all the bolts into the holes. As far as the Christmas trees, I'm just going to drill them when everything is all done. I'll drill the holes there and push the new Christmas trees in. In the past, I've tried lining up the plexiglass onto the old piece and marking the holes and drilling them, but sometimes they're off a little bit. And it's just easier, I find, to drill these holes when everything else is done. The corner ones will be the hardest to get in first. It's proving a little easier to come in the back and line up the trim bolts in the back, because you see the holes that they have to go in. And that's the way I'm doing it. This hole here is for the Christmas tree, but you can see all the other holes. I'm almost there. Well, all the bolts went in. You still got some gaps here, but like I said, they were in the original front. So the best I can do is just try to equal the distance between the gaps. It's lined up pretty good. Now the tedious part, I have to go and tighten every one of these nuts. I decided to hook this up to my drill to make it go a little quicker. Now it's time to put the front trim in over the delivery port. You got to make sure you keep that spacer back here lined up. Got to make sure it lines up into the carriage bolts, and then you snug them up, and then we'll put the metal bar right here in the front. This piece is adjustable. You could have it out a little bit. I like to push it in all the way and just keep it flush. Then it's less chance of something getting snagged on it. You put 2 carriage bolts on this side and 2 on the other side. These carriage bolts also help keep that trim piece tight as well. And while I'm back here, I'll also put the change bin housing in place, because I don't need to get back there anymore. And I'll put the change bin in. When you're putting the housing in, make sure you leave the hole at the top. That's where the coins come down. This is supposed to get 4 screws, but there was only 3 of them here, which is plenty to hold this in place. The coin bin. So it's looking pretty good. I got the trim piece in, the metal bar in, all the nuts are tight for the trim pieces. The only thing left to do was to drill the holes for the Christmas trees. There's 3 of them on this machine. Push them in, and then this job is done. Well, there we go. The machine looks brand new again, and it only cost $145 for the new front. Hopefully nobody bumps into it and cracks it again. Well, as always, happy vending.